In the sun-scorched deserts of Australia's Northern Territory, a young British backpacker vanished into thin air. His girlfriend survived, but the truth behind what really happened that night remains cloaked in mystery, controversy, and fear. Peter Falconio, 28 years old, and his girlfriend Joanne Lees were on a trip of a lifetime. The young couple had flown from the UK to explore Australia, free-spirited and adventurous. Around 8 p.m, while driving their orange combi van down the lonely Stuart Highway, the couple were flagged down by a man in a white ute flashing his lights. He told them he'd seen sparks coming from their exhaust. Peter got out to check, and that's when things took a dark turn. Joanne heard a loud bang. Moments later, a gun was pointed at her. She was tied up, hands bound, her attacker tied to force her into the vehicle, but Joanne fought back. She escaped, hiding in the bushes for nearly 5 hours, while her attacker searched for her. Covered in dirt and fear, she eventually flagged down a passing truck, but Peter was gone. Despite extensive searches, no trace of Peter Falconio's body was ever found. The nation was gripped. Who was this man, and how could someone disappear in a place so empty yet leave so little behind? We have a missing person, possible homicide, unknown assailant, suspect's vehicle, white Toyota ute. This is one of the most remote areas in Australia, but we had tyre tracks, DNA, and eventually a breakthrough. Years later, a man named Bradley John Murdoch was arrested. Already known to police for other offences, Joanne Lee identified him in a lineup. His DNA was found on her clothing in 2005. He was found guilty of Peter Falconio's murder and sentenced to life in prison. But doubts remain. No body, no murder weapon. Some say the case was flawed, that Joanne's story didn't even add up, that Murdoch was framed. Conspiracy theories swirled in the media, but the court believed her, and Peter's family never stopped fighting for justice. Peter Falconio's body has never been found to this day. Guess the Australian Outback keeps its secrets. What really happened on that lonely stretch of road? One man convicted, one woman haunted, and a young man still missing. In saying all this, not everybody believes Joanne Lees. But I'm going to read to you a detailed account of Joanne Lees' testimony regarding the night Peter Falconio disappeared. So this is based on the court transcripts, police interviews, and other official statements. So Joanne Lees was the only witness to one of Australia's most haunting disappearances. Her words, her memory, her strength throughout that stood between justice and silence. That's what one of the magazine articles said. So, Joanne Lees. It was the 14th of July 2001. We were driving along the Stuart Highway heading north, and it was dark, probably around 8 o'clock at night. A man in a white ute came up behind us, flashing his headlights. We pulled over. He got out. He came to Peter's window. He said he saw sparks coming from her exhaust and that we should check it out. Peter got out to look, and I slid over to the driver's seat. I then heard a loud bang, like a gunshot. I started to open the door to get out, and suddenly the man was behind me. He pointed a gun at me through the window, and I was frozen. He forced his way in, tied my hands behind my back with cable ties, and forced me to get back in the back of his vehicle. He had a dog in there, a reddish dog. It was barking. He left me alone briefly. I wiggled away from the ties. I kicked the door open and ran. I ran to the scrub, which is another word for bush here. Just ran and ran until I was far enough he thought he couldn't see me. Joanne hid in the thick, dark desert for hours, motionless, terrified the man would return. She said she could hear him searching for her, even the sound of his dog sniffling. I lay there for 4 to 5 hours. I didn't move. Then it was quiet. I made my way back to the road. A truck came. I jumped in front of it waving. I was crying. I told the driver. He shot my boyfriend. He tried to take me. In court, Joanne identified Bradley John Murdoch as her attacker. Her voice trembled, but her testimony was clear. Joanne says, I will never forget his face. I looked at him for about 5 seconds and I knew it was him. She described in detail the red dog, the white 4-wheel drive ute, and the moment that she broke free. DNA matching Murdoch's was found on her t-shirt. The prosecution called her testimony courageous and critical. Joanne Lee's final quote was, I have no doubt in my mind who attacked us that night. I just want justice for Peter. Her statement helped convince Bradley Murdoch of murder, even though Peter Falconio's body was never found. But I will say, Bradley John Murdoch did not testify in his own defence. During his 2005 trial for the murder of Peter Falconio and abduction and attempted assault of Joanne Lees, well, under Australian law, an accused person has the right not to testify, and Murdoch chose to exercise that right. So there's no official full testimony from Murdoch on the events of the 14th of July 2001. Bradley Murdoch's defence lawyer said Bradley Murdoch did not kill Peter Falconio. He was not at Burrow Creek that night. The prosecution has no body, no murder weapon, and no reliable timeline. Joanne Lees made mistaken identification. Here's what we got from the police interviews and statements. Murdoch denied ever seeing Peter Falconio or Joanne Lees. He said he was not in the area of the night of the disappearance. Murdoch claimed he was travelling south, not north, and he had stopped in Alice Springs, not near Burrow Creek. He said the white Toyota Land Cruiser that Joanne described was not his, and that he was being framed. But the other side of that is Murdoch's DNA was found on Joanne Lee's t-shirt. Joanne Lee's positively identified Murdoch in the photo lineup. A witness saw a man with a similar dog in a vehicle near the area around the time of the crime. Surveillance footage showed that the vehicle matching Murdoch's headed north around the incident, despite his claim he was heading south. And these are some of the post-conviction comments from him. I had nothing to do with it. I didn't even know these people existed until I was arrested. Murdoch has made several unsuccessful appeals, including one in 2007 and the other petition later, years still remain innocent. But there's several reasons why people have questioned Joanne Lee's account of what happened that night, of Peter Falconio's disappearance. So the doubts have been amplified by media speculation, conspiracy theories, and the fact that Peter's body was never found. But I'm going to tell you guys what the theories are and what the police evidence actually is. So critics, well, people like me, we point out that Joanne's story changed during the retellings of the interviews. And a lot of people think that her demeanour in interviews was very cold and it was very calm, and that's how I think. But we're not here to listen to what I think. We're here I'm going to show you both sides. See, the facts of it is minor inconsistencies are very common in trauma survivors, and she was tied up, terrified, and running for her life. They call that a fact, but we don't know that. The core of her account changed. I mean, they were stopped by a man, Peter went to check the van, and she was threatened and tied up and escaped to the bush, but that changed. At the time, the press, they scrutinised Joanne heavily, asking why she didn't cry more, why she wore sunglasses at the press conferences, and why she was so emotionless. A photo of her came out of her kissing Nick Riley in Sydney, surfaced months after the incident, and that triggered a lot of the public. So the facts for the jury to consider was that the affair was not relevant to the case and that she had hid it from the police, but it was used to discredit her in the media. So, like, if you're a person on the jury, you have to look at the facts, not just, the gossip that's getting around. But you have to admit it's pretty suspicious. So there's a lot of criticism about how she managed to escape from a man that was so dangerous as Murdoch, and then she survived by 5 hours hiding in the Outback. But then the other side of it, Lee has consistently explained how she freed herself from the cable ties and hid complete silence in darkness, something supported by terrain experts. Survivors escaping abductions or killers is uncommon, and her escape is entirely plausible. I don't know. Lots of online forums have speculated that Joanne may have harmed Peter herself or was involved in the cover-up. See, there's no forensic evidence linking Joanne to any wrongdoing. Murdoch's DNA was found on her shirt, and she positively identified him in a lineup. Police, prosecutors, and the jury were convinced of her credibility and trauma, whereas a lot of us watching were not. I'm going to give you guys a table, okay? So the doubt, there was no body. Suspicion, no proof of murder. But in reality, convictions without bodies happen. All evidence pointed to murder. The doubt, changing story. Suspicions, she's lying. Trauma affects memory, core, inconsistent. Okay? So then no emotion, that's what we think about her. And then we think she's cold. And then they say trauma reacts very greatly. Survived, too lucky. She explained how in the terrain conditions. Then other people say another man. Well, she had motive. And then relationship issues not evident in the crime. I wanted to point out like a little table that I made, like of why people think she's guilty and then why a juror would see it a different way. I wanted to present to you guys the inside job theory that Joanne was involved. So this theory is Joanne Lee's orchestrated Peter's disappearance or murder herself, possibly due to her relationship problems or an affair, and blamed a stranger to cover it up. Supporters say that didn't appear emotional enough after the event. That she had secretly seen another man, Nick Riley, in Sydney. No body was ever found, as she was the only witness. Why people don't think it lines up? There is zero forensic evidence linking Joanne to any wrongdoing. Murdoch's DNA was on her shirt. Police never found any inconsistencies in her court account. Her private affair, again, ruled into irrelevant of the crime. The second theory is no one died theory, Peter isn't dead theory, which I'm not on this one. So Peter Falconio faked his own death with Joanne Lee's help and disappeared to start a new life. No body has ever been found. Joanne refused to speak publicly after years, leading to suspicion. The remote location could make it easier to vanish without a trace. But this is why it doesn't hold up. Peter's bank accounts, identity, and communications were never ever used again. There's no motive for him to disappear. This theory relies purely on speculation and no other evidence. So what about the wrong man theory? Joanne misidentified Murdoch. So Joanne was attacked, but by someone other than Murdoch. She either misidentified him or picked him under the pressure. Okay, so the police lineup was controversial. It used images and not a live lineup. Eyewitnesses' identification is known to be unreliable under trauma. Murdoch's defense claimed that his dog was a different breed than the one that Joanne described. Why people don't think that it holds up? Okay, so Joanne had a clear view of the attacker and had no doubts identifying Murdoch. Murdoch's DNA was found on her shirt. A vehicle matching his was spotted in the same area, and the dog detailed the dog versus blue heeler, debatable and not conclusive. Well, there was the drug smuggling gone wrong theory. So this theory is that Joanne and Peter were involved in a drug run across Australia and Peter was killed by someone in that world, not by Murdoch. Supporters say some point to inconsistencies about where they were and why, and the remote route they took sometimes used by traffickers. Why people think this doesn't hold up? No evidence that ever surfaced linking either of them to drugs. They were young backpackers doing a common Australian road trip. The theory is purely based on speculation, no facts. This one is the media manipulation theory. Joanne lied for fame and sympathy. Joanne exaggerated and fabricated elements of the story to get media attention or profit from book sales and otherwise. The supporters of this theory say that she released a book a year later, no turning back. Some claim that she changed small parts of the story over time. Why people don't think this holds up? The trauma survivors often remember details differently over time. She didn't speak publicly for years and declined many interviews. She has never profited in any way and lived a quiet life. I've done it on the table for you guys. Okay, so the theory, Joanne helped kill Peter. The main flaw, no evidence, DNA points to Murdoch. Murdoch faked his own death. The main flaw in that is no financial, digital or personal trace was ever found of him. Joanne misidentified Murdoch. DNA confirmed attacker's identity. Drug smuggling theory, zero proof of involvement. Lied for attention. She lived privately and avoided media for years. And the reason why these theories exist is because there's no body. One key witness, Joanne. Public fascination with the crime. People do find it hard to accept things with no outcomes. Like a missing body. This is just my theory, this isn't anybody else's, but no body was ever found, okay? If she killed him, she had time to dispose of the body in the vast Outback. She could have faked the attack and hid, for the premeditated murder. Interviews and press conferences, she didn't cry, she didn't break down. She was too calm for someone who'd just seen her boyfriend murdered. Also, the affair. She'd been seeing another man, Nick Riley, while she was travelling. She was just too calm. Her memoir, The No Turning Back, that was just weird. And some parts of her timeline details are, slightly changed in interviews. But that's just my theory. I had to tell you guys the theories versus the fact. I have no facts. Nobody has any facts to prove that this woman did anything. A lot of us believe that, but I was 14 years old when this happened. I was watching the news stories with my mum and stuff like that, and it was everywhere, all day for so long. But I was still a 14-year-old child when Peter Falconio went missing. Remember to leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section on what you think. I still think that Joanne Lees had something to do with it. I mean, that boyfriend in Sydney was super suspicious. But if you think that it was the other way around, please let me know. Until the next one,